Can hormonal imbalance cause anxiety in women? Do you struggle with anxiety and you wonder whether it's related to hormone imbalance? Let's explore how your hormones influence mood and emotional health, and which imbalanced hormones are typically related to feelings of anxiousness. Hello, I am so thrilled to be here. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Michelle Cooke, period and hormone naturopath, natural fertility educator or menstrual cycle chart educator, and emotion release technique practitioner. And I help women struggling with their menstrual cycles have easy, pain-free periods, balanced hormones, and emotional well-being. I am the founder and director of Reproductive Wellness. I see patients both online and face to face. If you have any questions as we're going through, just pop them in the box down below for me, and I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. The hormone anxiety connection. Many women feel anxious before their period, and they wonder if it's just in their head. If your anxiety is related to hormones being out of balance, then typically there'll be a bit of a cyclical pattern to your anxiety, and it will be related to certain times throughout your menstrual cycle. Typically, anxiety will be worse in the luteal phase, particularly the late or latter part of that phase. So, after ovulation is when the luteal phase is. So, the latter part of that would be closer to when your next period is. And for most women, these feelings of anxiousness typically occur about a week before the next period. And for some women, it might actually take place in the early follicular phase. So, the follicular phase is on the other side of ovulation at the start of your cycle. So, from day one of your period up until ovulation, that's when the follicular phase is. And for these women, they might experience it on days 1 through to days 5, for example. And it may be shorter or longer, it just depends upon the person and what's happening for them. Day 1 is the start of your period. Okay, so it's really important to understand that girly hormones affect more than just our reproductive health. It extends way beyond that. And there's other important jobs or roles that these girly hormones have in our body as well, not just for the sake of our periods and our menstrual cycle health and things like that. So, our hormones impact brain function and the way we feel. What sort of hormones result in anxiety? Low estrogen. So, estrogen is involved in regulating serotonin levels, and serotonin is a feel good chemical messenger. So, understandably, then, if you have low levels of estrogen, you would experience emotional instability and anxiety. Low progesterone. So, progesterone, again, it isn't just a reproductive hormone, it also has a calming effect on the brain, but it doesn't work directly on the brain. So, the brain converts progesterone to allopregnanolone, and allopregnanolone is kind of like a little cheerleader for our GABA production in the brain. So, GABA is produced, and when it's produced by the brain, it says hello to things like feeling calm and feeling relaxed. So it's sort of like our chill out kind of hormone. So therefore, if we have less progesterone, this will lead to less allopregnanolone, and this will lead to GABA not being supported. And as a result, we're going to feel anxiety, restless, and difficulty calming down. Low testosterone. Poor testosterone is often left out of the equation when we speak about hormones and women. So, for women, testosterone is still very important, but of course, we don't have the same levels as men do. But testosterone is yet another friend of GABA. So, it's cheering on the action and production of GABA, which remember is our chill out hormone. So, it's all about feeling calm and relaxed. So, low testosterone is found to be associated with affecting emotional well-being in women, resulting in higher levels of things like panic, worry, and anxiety. Conversely, though, and pretty interestingly, um, a high testosterone level found in some women that have PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, can also result in anxiety as well. High cortisol. So, although this isn't considered to be a girly hormone, it does have such a profound effect on our girly hormones, and we can't dismiss this when we're talking about anxiety. So, cortisol is a stress hormone that is produced to help us adapt and cope with a stressful situation. It's involved in the fight or flight response. So, when you're in a state of chronic stress, initially cortisol will be really elevated. And this itself contributes to feelings of anxiety. So there's a little bit of a loop scenario that goes on here because with chronic stress, this leads to high production of cortisol, and this leads to anxiety and feeling anxious. But also, when you are feeling anxious, this will trigger cortisol production because it is stressful being anxious. So it's that never ending loop. Thyroid dysfunction. So, hypothyroidism, which is an underactive thyroid, hyperthyroidism, which is an overactive thyroid, Graves' disease, and Hashimoto's thyroiditis can arise in feelings of anxiety. Fascinatingly, T3, which is one of your thyroid hormones, it's actually the active thyroid hormone, which takes certain actions in the body, actually impacts your levels of serotonin and noradrenaline as well. So remember that serotonin is your feel good hormone. It's your feel good chemical messenger. So noradrenaline is involved in the stress response or fight or flight response. So this is how that sort of ties in. When is hormonal anxiety common? So in things like PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome, any other high estrogen states, because when we have high estrogen, progesterone relative to estrogen will be lower. And remember, low progesterone is another cause or contributing factor towards anxiety. So things like fibroids and endometriosis, for example, having these can increase the risk too. Thyroid conditions, as I mentioned, perimenopause. So, perimenopause is the prequel to menopause. So, this is not actual menopause yet, but it's that transitional phase. Then, in menopause itself, because of the low estrogen levels, remember low estrogen will increase the risk of feeling anxious. PMS, PMDD, so premenstrual dysphoric disorder, and also in the postpartum period as well, because a lot of your hormones have dropped away because ovulation's not occurring and you're breastfeeding and all those types of things as well. Natural ways to treat hormonal anxiety. So as you can see, there's many different types of hormone imbalances that can contribute to anxiety. You might have one of those situations going on, or there might be a combination that are contributing to that. Therefore, treatment will really have to be focused on what is going on for you specifically. Do you have low progesterone? Do you have low estrogen? Is it both of those? Do you have low testosterone? Maybe that's occurring at the same time as one of those other things as well. Is there a thyroid condition that's going on in the background? Um, is there, there's so many different scenarios. Is there stress? Stress is a huge one. That will also impact our levels of progesterone as well. So, there are herbal medicines that you can take specifically for anxiety. So, things like withania, magnolia, and passion flower. And they are very helpful and very useful. But ultimately, it's just treating the anxiety component, but it's not treating why you actually have the anxiety in the first place. So you want to actually be addressing the underlying causes and factors as to why you're actually feeling anxious. So a naturopath can actually help you with hormonal anxiety because this is what we do. We're digging for clues and underlying and contributing causative factors that are actually making you feel this way. So for me, I would be typically finding out the clues for your anxiety through testing, because how would we know if we don't test, then we're not able to see what is specifically going on for you. So I'd be looking at things like girly hormones. So a blood test that's performed at particular times throughout your menstrual cycle to assess things like your estrogen levels, your progesterone levels, and your testosterone levels. If indicated, sometimes it might be nice to actually do a salivary hormone test because we need to remember when we're testing bloods, this is only testing one type of estrogen, which is known as E2 or estradiol. So we actually don't know what's happening with E1 or E3, but we can actually gain this information from a salivary hormone profile. And also, the salivary hormone test is measuring your free and unbound hormones that are available to use, whereas in the blood, they're measuring the bound hormones, so they're already in use. So the E2 or estradiol, which is a type of estrogen measured in the blood, your body's already using that, but we don't know what the free and available amount is like. Cortisol. So that's another thing I would be testing as well. So you can actually do a blood test that will measure your morning cortisol levels. But in terms of testing through the blood, that's the only one that's available. So sometimes to gain a bit more of a thorough understanding of what your cortisol is like throughout the duration of the whole day, it's very useful to actually use a salivary cortisol test instead, because this will measure your salivary levels of cortisol in the morning, so between 6 and 8 a.m., and then at 12 p.m., and then at 4 p.m., and then at 8 p.m., because these can all be different. They might be high or low, and then we sort of gain more of an understanding about what's going on throughout the whole day there for you. Now, with the thyroid, I love to do this. Most of it is done through a blood test, but I like a complete hormone thyroid profile. So, a lot of the time, only TSH is tested through the GP, and it's no fault of theirs. In Australia, we use Medicare, and a lot of our tests are covered and bulk billed, which is great. So, they only really test your thyroid hormones if TSH is really out of the reference range. But if it's still within that range, but really, really high or really, really low, often that's dismissed and not considered, kind of enough to go and get your T4 and T3 done. So I always think that it's worthwhile to request a full thyroid hormone profile so that you can gain understanding about what's happening with T4 and T3 because they are thyroid hormones. TSH is just tapping on the shoulder of your thyroid and saying, hey, can you produce T4? And then T4 will convert into T3, which is an active thyroid hormone. But we would never sort of gain that understanding if we just tested TSH. So it's well worthwhile actually saying, I'm happy to pay for these extra sort of thyroid tests to gain more of an understanding. So TSH, T4, T3. I also like to look at the thyroid antibodies as well because if these are high, these will actually attack your thyroid gland and stop you producing hormones as well. So it's really, really important to see what's going on with that. So TPO antibodies and TGAB antibodies. The other thing I like to assess in terms of the thyroid is iodine because we need enough iodine for the thyroid to function well and do its thing properly. So that's just done through a wee test. Basically, you just do that and it will assess your iodine levels that way. Gut health. So, gut health is extremely important in terms of hormones. And I feel like you can't really treat hormones unless you actually look at what's happening in the gut. Because we have to remember that our gut has a special type of family of bacteria there called the estrobolome, which will regulate estrogen levels, okay? So it will keep it at just the right levels. So if that family of bacteria is disturbed or they're not happy or there's not enough of them, there may be higher estrogen levels or there may be lower estrogen levels. So both of those situations are not ideal. So we need to sort of address this because if we're just treating the hormones and we just give you herbs just to treat the hormonal imbalance, it's going to be an uphill battle to actually fix it properly. So, what I like to do is get my patients to do a gut microbiome test. This can be done at home, and you just take a little sample of your poo, and it will give us an understanding of what is your bacteria like there? What is your good bacteria levels like? Are there any bad bacteria that are overgrown? Are there any opportunistic bacteria? So, bacteria that were nice, but they've turned a bit nasty and they're creating havoc in the gut. Are there any parasites, for example, that have decided to join the party as well? Are there any inflammatory markers that indicate there's inflammation in the gut? Maybe there's damage to the lining and you're not absorbing the nutrients that you need. And remember that low nutrients can also contribute to anxiety as well. Or there might be things like leaky gut as well that is happening and, causing a lot of hormone imbalance. And any inflammation in the body, remember, will cause hormone imbalance as a result as well. Inflammation anywhere. Nutrient deficiencies. So, as I mentioned, there's certain nutrients that we need for mood, and we need it for emotional health, and we need it for hormone balance as well. So, things like zinc, things like B vitamins. And when I speak about B vitamins, things that you can test in the blood, for example, are things like folate and B12. Um, Also, vitamin D is an important one if I haven't mentioned that already. So, vitamin D, zinc, folate, B12, and also iodine, as I mentioned before, are all really important considerations when it comes to anxiety, but also hormone health and everything, really. So then, in terms of treatment, usually this will include things like dietary and lifestyle advice, along with herbal medicine and nutritional medicine as well. I'm also trained in a technique known as emotion release technique. So this is very, very important to get to the bottom of any underlying emotions or stress that are related to your anxiety or your hormone imbalance, for example. And we do this by assessing the subconscious nervous system, which is really, really important because if we don't sort of unlock that side of things, we can treat you with physical things till the cows come home. We could give you herbal medicine and nutritional medicine, but it still might not cut it because we haven't got to those sort of core things in the subconscious nervous system. So, if you would like support with your hormonal anxiety, I would absolutely love to help you. If you're watching on my YouTube channel, there's a link in the description. If you're watching on my website blog, there's also a link down below. So, just click on that to book your appointment so that we can get started and get you feeling calm and happy and just feeling like yourself again. So, FYI, I will be uploading a video every single week speaking about women's health, periods, menstrual cycles, and hormones. And so I would love for you to join me on the next video. Make sure that you stay tuned. Thank you so very much for watching. If you're watching on my YouTube channel, be sure to like and subscribe and also hit that bell icon so that you don't miss any future videos. And thank you again, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye.